Okay, so we are Tennessee Tech University, and this is kind of our idea of how the Solar Challenge would go. First, let me introduce the team and myself. So I'm Ryan. I did most of the battery analysis and a lot of the Aurora setting up. Going down the list, our professor, Dr. Purdue, was our team leader and our advisor if we had any questions about anything that we didn't have a knowledge on. Chandler McCrary did a lot of the SAM analysis and the financial analysis. Zach Gardner did a lot of the PV system layout and kind of the grid demand analysis, a lot of the MATLAB work. Tyler Haddock and Garrett Davis did the construction plan and the site layout, doing all the construction codes and laying out the design for us. Along with Garrett Davis, we had Jackson Breyer and Tavin Kirkpatrick doing the Aurora analysis along with myself. And then Nick Roth, he did all of this. He did a lot of this stuff, a little bit of everything. I mean, he was kind of our leader other than our professor. For our proposal, we finally ended up on a module of 11 panels. This would help us achieve our 2.5 megawatt production goal. And each of these modules will have their own converter and will hook up to a battery that we selected. And we'll get into that here in a second. So with the battery we decided on, we were thinking about just a bunch of lead acid batteries, but we found out that those aren't very efficient. So we ended up with an iron flow redox battery that has a long lifetime, low maintenance costs. You don't get the amount of storage you would in like a lithium ion battery or something like that. But with our plan that we had decided on, we don't need to store power for a long time. Coming from the company we used, it does come insured and it lasts over 20,000 cycles. The scheme we came up with is kind of reducing the power spikes and not relying solely off the solar power we generate. This would help us, prevent us from spending a lot of money on batteries. And then in 10 years or whenever those batteries die, having to buy more batteries. This would create room for capital. A lot of the analysis we used was from SAM for the financial and the energy production. And like I said before, the Aurora Solar used for the design of it to get the panels placed on the buildings where we wanted them.
Okay, yeah, correction, we have 4,755 solar panels, and we divided them between 3 different buildings. We did the Auraria campus west classroom, and pictured here we did Boulder Creek and the Cherry Creek building. And sort of our plan was, he said 11 solar panels, that's not right, it's 11, it's groupings divisible by 11 because we need an inverter for every 11 solar panels. We used Aurora to make sure that we had at least 95% irradiance. After we modeled all the obstructions and all the areas of lower irradiance, we used the fill module sort of design and kind of scaled it back until we had the number of panels in large groupings. The idea of kind of localizing it to just a couple buildings, just make construction plan a lot easier, fewer buildings to deal with, and larger modules. We have a pretty tight spacing, so we could get as many solar panels into one area as possible with a 15-degree tilt facing sort of south-southeast, sort of with the sides of the panels parallel to the edges of the buildings. And this is our expected outcome impact analysis. We have estimated 2,800,000 kilowatt hours. And we use flow batteries. The idea with the flow batteries is we took all the grid demand data for the whole campus and sort of treated it as one, as if all the power would be distributed to the whole campus. And we use MATLAB to sort of split it up and kind of figure out what an average day looks like in each month, because we do get a little bit different grid demand during months of extreme temperature lows or highs in the summers and in the winter. And we basically use the flow battery as a means to cut the peaks and kind of look at where we're going to have the highest grid demand and supplement that with solar power. We didn't really see like a huge benefit to generating lots and lots of power and selling it back to the grid just because of the cost of the solar panels. So our plan was just to kind of cycle back and forth and shave off the peaks. And this is just a quick, look at the solar panel that we picked. We used the SPR X22360 came from a trusted brand, relatively high efficiency, great price point, and we selected it specifically for it's known to have great cold weather performance, which was really important for the Denver area.
So I'm going to take charge here a little bit. Just a quick look at the battery specifications that we chose. I think iron flow batteries aren't always a super popular choice in PV system storage strategies, and so I just wanted to talk about why we chose these. We kind of let the economics of the project drive the design. So in iterating different models designs in SAM, we found that there isn't much benefit in having a huge storage system in terms of economics, not necessarily resiliency, to how a large system, specifically in this case, because the assumption was that power was being charged at a flat rate to the Auraria campus. When that's the case, shifting power between on-peak and off-peak hours does not really benefit the campus much in terms of electricity bill. And so the thought was we need to optimize the system such that we would minimize that bill as an initial step, as an initial design point for the system. What we found is that typically what was causing the spikes in bill price compared to the charge rate was short spikes from different campuses or different buildings on the campus. They're increasing the total load pulled from the grid holistically as viewed from the campus perspective. And so the thought was having a battery system large enough to minimize those peaks, but still small enough that it was a low initial investment, would create a robust platform to expand upon in later years. So I'll just talk about that a little bit more. So the thought is to have a relatively small storage system. So 6 of those redox iron flow batteries by ESS. And they would be essentially tended by the PV system. And then the rest of the power would be dumped back into the grid where needed. Because the power output by the panels is relatively small compared to the grid demand, we'll never exceed the max that we're allowed to generate. And so essentially we'll tend the batteries so that they'll stay fully charged. And when there is a large load for a short period of times, the batteries can handle that large load and maintain a relatively low peak. And so in the SAM analysis, we basically tuned the battery control systems to limit those loads like you can see here. We would basically remove the green peak and normalize the data back to the orange curve, the PV peak strategy curve. And you can see we pull a lot of power relatively from the total size of the battery system. But the batteries were really only meant to cope with these short, fast peaks. And we found that if you applied the number of batteries we had to the total year, we were able to handle 100% of the fast, high peaks, like the one you can see in green here. So I'm going to hand off.
So for our system, we decided to pay for 40% of it with cash and take out a loan to cover the other 60%. That loan would be paid off 5% per year for 25 years. The top left table here shows our total cost, net present value, the payback period in years, and then the discounted payback period. And then it also has our 30-year internal rate of return. And then the right table shows our various system financial statistics before and after we added in the batteries. So while the batteries did increase our initial cost by about 27%, they also created a 32% increase in yearly savings. The batteries also decreased the simple payback period by about half a year, and pretty much everything else remained virtually the same. So overall, the batteries are a financially advantageous addition to the system.
So using information from a report from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, we estimated the review and survey process before actually beginning construction will take about 66 days for the actual applying and review process based on the size of the system we had designed. And we also estimated that the construction would be about 8 months to complete. And then following that, they'd have to go through a couple weeks of inspection before everything can actually be operated. And all told, the time taken from the beginning to the end of the build process should to first activation should be just under a year. As a general review of some of our design aspects, we chose these iron flow batteries not necessarily for long-term storage, but instead to kind of spread energy from peak production to help lower energy consumption from the grid during any periods of peak demand. And we did that because we found it saved a little more money to just lower any grid consumption as opposed to actually selling back excess energy. We chose to set up our cells in these modules as a way to easily quantify our data and to upscale or downscale a model to meet the desired energy production needs. The tools we used for most of these processes were Auraria for the actual design aspect, SAM for our financial analyses, and we used MATLAB and Excel for general calculations and to visually represent all of our data.
Are there any questions?